Hello and welcome to the first episode of Sean Hill Coaching Podcast. So the reason I'm doing this podcast is because I find I get a lot of questions from clients, some through check-ins, just through day-to-day, and I find a lot of those questions are very similar. So it's definitely, and what I mean by that is they're quite repetitive in the sense that they come from lots from different people. So I do think that they are relatable for a lot of other people out there that are looking for answers to questions. So rather than just feeding to them directly, I thought I would also come on here and start doing a podcast so that I can answer those questions in front of you so that you can also pick up on some of the tips as well that I'm giving to my clients. And of course, on the back of this, feel free to send in any other questions that you have, any topics that you would like covered, because, you know, this is going to be ongoing throughout the year. So I do want to make sure that I'm touching on topics and questions that are that are what you want to hear about, essentially. So welcome. Thank you for watching, and I will fire through our first episode. So some interesting questions today. First few are actually almost slightly similar, and there's a bit of a theme here. So first question is about relationships with alcohol. Now, this seems to be a huge one at the moment. The relationship with alcohol, I think in society has generally changed anyway. And even for myself, and I think it's probably more age related for me as well, in terms of how I can manage my work, my day to day, how I can function now with alcohol is very different to how it used to be. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that can also relate, So it is quite a big question. And I think particularly for women, particularly women over the age of like 35, 40, and those that are, busy and got other things to do. And unfortunately, alcohol, as we process it differently as we grow older and it takes us longer to recover, it really can affect our lifestyle. And also the biggest factor, which I think is much more talked about now, is sleep and the quality of sleep. And now that we're all able to, have watches and things like that to actually see how our sleep is, we're seeing that pattern of how it's interrupting that and the quality of our sleep that maybe we never even realized before. And I do think, again, we're in a society where we're more concerned than ever about, aging, how we look, as much as how we function. So that all feeds into it. We know if we're going to get bad sleep, we're going to potentially age quicker and all those sort of things. And, it's a big factor. And on top of that, of course, it's affecting our diet as well, because they're empty calories, that we're not getting any nutrients from it. So if we are looking for, fat loss, weight loss, a change of physique, alcohol plays a big part in it can take us off track, and certainly from a food perspective, as well as we are at events, social events, it can take our inhibitions away, maybe take that control away that we'd normally have, or the willpower that we'd normally have. So it really just feeds into everything, doesn't it? Which is a massive shame, because I don't know about anybody else out there, but I have grown up with, I was in the 80s, I was an 80s child, so alcohol was a big part of my life for a long time. And and it's weird. It's an identity shift to have to change that as well. So anyway, so how do we change our relationship with alcohol? Okay, so the first thing we need to think about, I suppose, is why we're changing that relationship. So most of the time, and I think what I alluded to there is, the cost of it is now overweighing the reward, right? So the pro is no longer overweighing the con, right? So it's taking us longer to recover. So they're often the reasons why. So we need to always remember that, because I think that feeds into us being able to follow through with the decisions that we make. So that would be the first thing I would think about. But also number two is thinking about what that looks like for you. So when you say a better relationship with alcohol, what does that look like, and what does that person what do they actually do? Okay, what does that look like? Because it's going to be different for different people. So for some it means giving it up altogether. For some it means making it a couple of nights a week with a couple of drinks rather than 5 times a week. For others it's like cutting it down to one night a month and still only having a couple, or having one big night out a month but not for the rest of rest of the month. And for some, it's, not drinking in the week and only drinking at weekends. So that is going to look different for everybody. So I think the first thing is you've got to understand why you're doing it and what that better relationship actually looks like, and then work backwards from there. So, for instance, if you're someone who wants to cut down your alcohol intake on a night out, so generally you might go out and have like 5 or 6 drinks, and you want to cut that down to say like 2, you've got to think, okay, how am I going to go about that? How is that going to work for me? Is that a case of, are you going to be drinking water in between? Are you having a different kind of drink possibly as well? Are you doing it for a reason of fat loss and weight loss, or is it more for your general health? So all of these factors will come into it about how you do it and why you do it. But I think those are the 2 big questions to ask first of all, and then lead on from there. Question 2. So this one again is slightly related. So it's about how we treat balance overall. So not just for alcohol, but for everything, and whether it be social life to diet to, making sure that we get the training sessions in, but we actually have a bit of balance in life, so we don't feel like that all of our energy is just training and diet, and and we stop feeling like we have any kind of life at all, which again I can relate to. I think, again, it's about that 80-20 balance, which you'll often hear when it comes to diet as well, like 80% whole food, 20% soul food. And I think it's the same when it comes to life balance as well. I mean, we want to be hopefully enjoying our training anyway. So make sure that you're enjoying your training in one way or another, that it is something that you enjoy and how happy to do. Yes, not every session is going to be, depending on what level that you're at and how what you're actually training for, will depend on maybe whether you enjoy it every time. But certainly, knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it is the first point, so that you feel comfortable with your training program and the things that you need to do with your diet, and everything that you're doing and why you're doing it. So that's number 1. But then outside of that, again, I think it's about that 20% range. So whether that's, you count that over a week as like one day, it doesn't mean throw it all out the window and just do what you like, but it just means that you might have that one day where you're not training, your breakfast is ever so slightly different. So it's just that you're slightly just going, another way that sort of still fits in with your program. It still works around it, but actually it just slightly works different. Or, you're going for a walk, or you have the extra coffee, or whatever it may be. But I just think it's, it's that 80% kind of doing well. Because if you look over a year, and if you are good and consistent with your training, with your diet, with what it is that you're trying to achieve and your goals, 80% of the time you're going to get some good results from that. And 20%, it's fine. Maybe you go on holiday and you give it a miss that week. It's not going to change everything for the rest of the year. It's just about kind of getting back on track where you can. So that would be my answer to that one at this point. So in terms of next question. So this is a good one, and actually it's been coming up a few times with clients as well, around healthy foods and healthy snacks, how to get your protein in through healthy snacks. Now, I personally really focus around things like fire yogurt, because it's a good high amount of protein, and it's good for you. You've got different fat percentages you can have as well, depending on your goals. A 5% one definitely tastes better than the 0, but you've got to think about what it is that you need it for, right? So that would be one of the ones that I would 100% go to if you're not vegan and you like it, essentially. So the other ways that I would look at that is, you've certainly got to make a list of the things that you like. But eggs are really great, so of course you can have them with lots of different things. Smoked salmon is another great form of protein. Obviously that's a nice bit of healthy fats as well. Even things like sourdough bread has a decent amount of protein also, as well as you could also look at things like a dip. So like cottage cheese you can dip into. That's a good one. And I've made a little bit of a note here actually. So things like tuna in spring water is great, because it's actually really like low in calorie, but it's got loads of protein in, and you can have that on Ryvita or your sourdough bread or whatever it may be. And I know it might not appear like a snack, but actually you can have that, maybe not in the office, open up your tin of tuna. I'm sure everyone would be really appreciative of that. Cheese is also a good one, in moderation. Cheese is a great source of protein. And then of course you've got your nuts and things. Of course they are quite high in fat. So, portion wise, you're going to moderate that with, your goals, your calories, but that can work as well. You've got your shakes, of course, whey protein. If you're vegan, you might be looking at tofu cubes or something like dried chickpeas. They can also be really good as well. And again, of course, you've got your nuts and things like that also. I'm just seeing on my notes as well, if there's anything else. I mean, obviously, when it comes to snacks, you can also use other things. You can still have chicken. You can still have, even things like, certain vegetables. Like if you have pepper in your cottage cheese, they still have protein in. So there's still a decent amount there. And then the skyr yogurts as well. They're good alongside Fage. I wrote that down. Other than that, yeah, I think it's. There are, of course, other things like that are a bit more processed, like protein bars, whey protein, etc. You've got your pea protein if you're vegan as well, but they are there too. And also seeds, actually, they're really good to have as part of your protein diet also. So I think there is, there's a fair few things out there to have. But in terms of healthy snacks, most of those are what I would suggest. And even oats, things like that, they've got a decent amount of protein in as well. So other than that, I would say that what you could do is you could look at making your own sort of protein, so like protein balls, whether that's like with dates and your protein powders, and then also like, putting some almond butter in there and that kind of thing. That can, you can make protein balls. There's different recipes online for that. So you do have to think a little bit out of the box, I think, for the healthy snacks, but there's no big secret to it. Protein is protein. What you see on the shelves is already out there. It's just kind of putting things together and really just planning it and prepping it. And that's the main thing. That's it. So moving on from that. So how to improve posture in a way that I can build into my workday. Now, this is a really good one because I think so many of my clients, one of the first things that we actually change is someone's posture. And nobody ever sees themselves from the back, really. No one really, unless you're in a changing room in H&M, you're not really looking at the back of you very often, are you? And that's the first place that most of my clients see their change, and it usually is a bit of posture and the back muscles start to show as well, and we really see a difference of that shape, and often where we lose weight, lose fat quicker as well, and we might not have even noticed it because we haven't looked. So this is where photos actually can be very useful, and also measurements as well is the other one. So I would say in terms of a general work day, okay, look, I'm not going to say anything that's going to blow anyone's mind. It simply is, you've got to think about things like how you're sitting, what kind of chair you're sitting on. Is there a way that you can make your laptop higher as well, so that actually you're not having to bend over? I think they're fundamentally things that you can think of. The other way that you could do it is like a standing desk. A lot of people, obviously, a lot of the posture issues that we have is from bending over again. So if you're standing up, you're more likely to kind of stand up straight and be a bit more aware of your posture. There are things that you can get as well to actually wear to help your posture, just to give you a little bit more lift in that area. But I think other than that, I think, stretching, making sure that you have every time you have a break, open up that chest. What you could do is, a few stretch exercises that are just going to allow you to open up that chest. It's not about stretching the back, it's about opening up the chest and allowing that balance, because all we're doing at a desk, or as we're sort of encroaching into that posture, that bad posture, is that we're just essentially tightening the chest and collapsing it. So the more that we can open that up, the better, and throughout the day as many times as possible. If you want to do it every time you go to the loo, no one else can see you, give yourself a little stretch, open up that front of the chest, and I think that on its own will make a massive difference. Other than that, I think it's that stretch in the morning, stretch in the evening, as many times as you can, really, just to, again, open up that chest, even as you're watching TV, if you can just, if you have something that you can lay on, for instance, that will just allow you to open up and just sort of lay back. You can even put a pillow behind you as well. That can be a really good way of doing it. But there's definitely lots of different stretches and things that you can be doing. But certainly on a day-to-day basis at your desk, it's all about kind of sitting up straight and making sure that your laptop and everything that all the equipment that you have around you is in the right place to allow you the best posture possible. And that will get easier, particularly if you're training, because the more that you then open up, mobilize, and get into the right position of alignment before you train, you're going to then train the muscles to be in the right alignment, so that again, over time, actually sitting up straight, doing those things will become less conscious and a little bit more habitual for you as well. And, will just essentially give you better posture. Lovely. And again, sticking on the same theme, next one is tips for flexibility and stretching. So I think this really depends what the what you want to stretch and what the flexibility issues are, of course. I think in terms of when you want to be more flexible, we've got to place a little bit more time on it. I think if you're someone who is categorically just not going to put that time aside where you've got half an hour to really stretch and hold positions for a long period of time, then I would recommend go to a yoga class, one that's going to be specifically about stretching, about holding poses for longer. So I think it's yin or hatha yoga is one of those. And yeah, you've got to hold poses for longer, and you've got to get uncomfortable. You've got to allow the muscles to relax to enable them to become more flexible, because we've got to change the tissue, and we're not going to do that through a 15-20 second stretch. It's got to be 60 seconds or more, really, that we hold a stretch position. And once we feel a shake, yep, we're in the right place. So I think that my tip really, just for getting more flexible, is just hold your stretches for longer. And that would be the main thing. But I think in terms of depending on what you want to stretch, so, if you're feeling particularly tight anywhere, then of course that's the area that you need to stretch the most. And it's usually hips, usually the thoracic sort of upper spine area. So use a roller as best you can as well. Do things as much as you can before bed, and as you get up, to mobilize, but then also take that time to stretch as well. But you've got to hold the pose for longer than 30 seconds as well. All right, so that's the first episode of this podcast, and so I hope you found it useful. If there's anything that you would like covered, or anything that you want me to expand upon, or you would like to ask a question on anything that we've talked about today, then do message me and comment below. And if you liked it and you want more and you want to see more, then please do give me a thumbs up as well. So I hope you're having a good day, and I'll see you next time.